Good morning. I hope that you are all doing well this morning, and it's been a blessed morning. Curtis led us in a prayer at the very beginning of service, and I know he and I were talking. It's been a difficult month for several of us, and several of us have seen friends or family pass. But beyond that, we need to be reminded, and I appreciate so many of you putting something on my Facebook page. We remind ourselves that even outside of the struggles of life, that I will sing the Lord's praise, for He has been good to me, the 13th Psalm. And so verse 6, and we need to be reminded of that always as we look at the things that go on around us about life and how that God blesses us, and He gives to us a future and a purpose. And one of those greatest purposes is to glorify His name in front of the world that surrounds us. And so we look for that opportunity. Today we're going to be in Genesis chapter 6. We'll begin our reading there in just a minute if you want to turn there. As we continue to kind of echo the lessons that our young people are learning who are headed to leadership training for Christ and a blessing in that program. And as this morning we're going to look at the flood, the ark, the man, and the promise. And I think that's important for us to take a look at these historical stories and remind ourselves of those. Before we dive in this morning, though, I want to say if you're visiting with us this morning, we're so glad that you're here. We feel like that you've found the perfect place for imperfect people to worship a perfect God, and we want you to be a part of that, and we pray that it'll be a blessing as you share this time with us together, especially as we surrounded mentally the Lord's table and remembered the sacrifice that He made for us. What an incredible thing to be blessed with that time and that opportunity. God gives to us so many things in life, and sometimes it's good to slow down and to be reminded of those, and that's one of the things that I want to do with our lessons here out of Genesis for the next few weeks. And I pray that these lessons will be a blessing to you as we look at them together. Genesis chapter 6, we're going to begin in verse 9. So if you want to jump down there with me, Genesis 6, beginning in verse 9. This is the account of Noah and his family, and Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence, and God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on the earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all the people, for the earth is filled with violence. Because of them, I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress. Your version may say gopher wood. Make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening of 1 cubit high all around, and put a door in the side of the ark, and make lower, middle, and upper decks. And I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all the life under the heavens and every creature that has the breath of life in it. And everything on the earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you, and you are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. And you are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. And Noah did everything just as God commanded. And so today we want to take a look at this story, and I want to encourage you to take time to sit down and read 6 through 9 and make this history story a part of your faith and a part of your lives. But there's some things that I want us to look at and consider. And the first thing I want to mention is, it's funny that these chapters are summed up in Hebrews chapter 11 for us. Hebrews chapter 11 verses 6 and 7 say, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that is keeping with faith. And so I read that to you because it's important for us as we take a look at things to remember that part of our belief in the history of the Bible is our faith. And we take a look at the way the world wants to argue, and the verses that Stacy read to us from 2 Corinthians chapter 10 this morning, that there are arguments that always set themselves up against any of us. And matter of fact, I took some time this week, and matter of fact, in the college and young professionals class this morning, I showed a video, very professionally done, that basically, without using these words, the sum of the video is, if you believe in the ark, you're an idiot. And it's a good video, very professionally done, well done, good pictures. Even shows the ark in Turkey, that the boat like an ark. It measures the same as the ark. People believe it is the ark. I don't believe it's the ark. I think there's another boat actually higher up on Mount Ararat that if one of those is actually the ark, it's the higher one, not the one that's laying in the field. You can see the boat shape outline too, by the way. Come see me if you don't know what I'm talking about. This is good stuff that's out there for you to know that affirms your faith as a Christian. And so it's important to know when people come after us and say, surely you don't believe something like that happened, we can say, are you not aware of the evidence that exists? Right? And so as we think about those things, I want to share with you a few things. First of all, Genesis 6 through 11, actually, the word flood used in those chapters is found 12 times and then one other time in the entire Bible in Psalm 29. The word used in all other scripture is different than this word. When it talks about flood or floodwaters or something being flooded, the word in Genesis 6 through 11 and Psalm 29, matter of fact, Psalm 29:10 says, Jehovah sits as king of the flood, or your version might say, enthroned over the flood. Right? This flood, this word means to encompass, to totally cover. It's a word that is beyond something that our scientists today try to tell us there have been regional floods all over the world, but there was never a flood in one place at one time. Okay? And so they go about this and they try to argue away and I want to give you two pieces of information that are there are more, but I just want to give to you two quick ones. One is coal seams. All around the earth there are seams of coal, and they're found all over the earth. So there's no denying that the entire earth, all land masses at one time have been under floodwaters, right? You can't argue that point. But they say it's regional, that it didn't all occur at one time. I want to introduce you to a name this morning, and you can look him up on your own time. His name is Nicholas Rupke. He was born on the 22nd of January in 1944 in Rotterdam. He is a Dutch historian and scientist who began his academic career as a marine geologist. He studied biology, geology at the University of Groningen, which is a Dutch university, and geology and history of science at Princeton for his master's, and then his doctor's degree at Oxford in the UK. We're talking about a very highly educated, intelligent man, and he educates on polystrate fossils. Now you're wondering, what in the world is a polystrate fossil, right? One of those has to do with trees, and I want to tell you about those this morning for just a second. Polystrate fossils, these trees, are found all over the world, and they stretch. Matter of fact, the largest one found is 45 feet tall, and it stretches through numerous stratas of the earth. And so there's a question mark there. How can it stretch through all these different stratas? Because science says that it takes so many hundreds of years for this strata, and so many hundreds of years or thousands. If you're a true evolutionist, they'll say, here's 1,000,000, here's 1,000,000, here's 1,000,000, here's 1,000,000. But there are these trees that reach from strata to strata to strata, fossilized in those stratas. Now, the strange thing about that is, most often, the roots are never with the tree. It's like it's been broken off at the bottom, and the roots. And so all around the world, as you study in strata, you can find root balls of trees. The tree's not there, but the roots are there. So where did the tree go? And this doesn't happen regionally. It happens worldwide. Now, isn't that interesting? This is what Rupke says in one of his writings. Personally, I am of the opinion that polystrate fossils constitute a crucial phenomenon both to the actuality and the mechanism of cataclysmic deposition. He's talking about a whole world flood that deposited these fossils. Curiously, a paper on polystrate fossils appears to be a black swan in geological literature. The antecedent to this synopsis, a systematic discussion of the relevant phenomena, was never published. However, geologists must have been informed about these fossils. In view of this, it seems unintelligible that uniformitarianism has kept its dominant position. So what he's saying is it is a no-no to write as a geological scientist about polystrate fossils because they deny everything else we believe. Everything. So nobody in the science world talks about them, discusses them, or shares facts about those fossils that are found. And this is one of those things that's hidden from you, that you won't read about. Because if you begin discussing this as a professor at a college, there's no answer except for the fact that God caused a worldwide covering flood. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? Now, you won't, high schoolers, junior hires, you're not going to hear that in school. They will not discuss this in school. And if they do, they're going to do it out of ignorance because they don't know what they've just said, because they've just admitted that God had caused a worldwide flood on the earth. You're sure not going to hear about it in colleges and universities. So there's some things here that I want to mention too. There's some incredible things about the ark. You know, we have 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and the height is about 30 cubits. Now, a cubit is the length of a man's arm. And of course, if you take Joe's arm, right, and my son's arm are probably a little bit different. Joe's, at least, I'd say Joe's probably 13, 14 inches taller than my son. So Joe's forearm is going to be different than my son's forearm, or Bob's forearm and my forearm. So do we know exactly? No, we don't. So let me give you this. The ark was somewhere between 450 to 510 feet long, about 75 to 85, 87 foot wide, and about 45 to 52 feet tall. Now, let me give you this idea. This auditorium here is, from that wall to that wall, is 95 feet. That means if we take this auditorium, and it's about 50, I can't remember, about 52, 54 feet wide. If we take this auditorium and we copy it, and we put 4 more out across that field and south of 161st Street. 4 more. Then we take this and add another building on top of this roof. Now we're beginning to get close to the size of the ark. So if we take a look at that and we take the average number, right, of about 450 feet or so, 450 feet, the shortest one that Christian scientists say that the ark is. If we take that and we put a mathematical formula to it, right? You guys who know how to figure out concrete, things like that, cubic feet. The ark had 1.6, a little over 1.6 million cubic square feet of storage space inside of it. That's like taking 6 miles of train cars, over 6 miles of train cars, and filling them up. What that means is, if a train started here, it's going to end at Highway 75 in Glenpool. Okay? That's a lot of space. That's a lot of space. And the reality is, there's actually a member of the church who is an engineer, and he sat down and he began to and he took what's the average height of a hippo and a zebra and a giraffe and an elephant, and would they fit into the boat? And the reality is, yes, they will. Every type of animal on the earth will fit into the ark with room left over. Now, why room left over? Because they had to feed the animals. Now you think about the extraordinary experience of Noah and his family. And I have this picture in my head. I don't know why, maybe I'm too imaginative, Curtis, right? Sitting around the fire and, Noah and his wife, and he's got his sons and his daughter-in-laws, and they're sitting around having a meal late one evening as they finish the work on the ark. And walking up beside him comes a silverback gorilla and sits down right beside him and just puts his hand out. Can I have some? Can you imagine? He told Noah in the verses that we read, the animals will come to you. I can see Shem's wife running across the field. There's something coming. It looks like a lizard, but it's huge. And it's got these giant teeth. And I watched it swallow another animal whole. And then it did this funny roll thing in this little bit of water. And then it got up and started walking towards us again. And can you imagine? Maybe Noah's wife's working away at the mill and suddenly there's a little monkey sitting on the table beside her. Or a parrot lands on Noah's shoulder and rides the rest of the day as he works around the boat. What an incredible experience that Noah and his family had because of Noah's walk in life. One of the things I want to mention to you is the world, and on YouTube there are several videos that say, matter of fact, another one of those professionally done videos that looks really good, and in that video they say the ark would never survive, and then they show you 2 or 3 boats that have snapped in half, steel, modern shipping boats that have snapped in half at sea. And so we have to ask ourselves, all right, how do we reply to something like that? And the reality is they're liars. The boat snapped at sea, but that has nothing to do. It's bad engineering, it's bad building. There are plenty of boats. So we're talking about a boat from 450 to 500 feet long. Is there anything out there like that at all? And in the videos on YouTube, they'll say, no. That's absolutely not the truth. They're lying, and they're lying to your kids who are watching these types of videos. Parents, are you ready for me to step on your toes? If you don't know what your kids are watching on YouTube and they're under 18, you're not being the parent you need to be. You need to be aware. Garbage in, garbage out. Be careful about the junk that you're allowing your kids to put in their head. There's a boat called the Zhang. Matter of fact, it's named after the man of China, Zhang He. In the 1400s, there was a Chinese armada that averaged 400 feet long that were called the treasure ships. You guys who love to research treasure, look up the Chinese treasure armada. It's interesting stuff. So it was a Great Eastern wooden schooners. This is what these are, basically Chinese giant wooden ships, around 400 and plus feet long. There's actually a boat called the Great Eastern that was a wooden schooner that was 692 feet long that sailed the oceans for about 11, 12 years or so. The Queen Mary II. Queen Elizabeth II, right? QE2, is that what it is, I think? It's somewhere around 1,100 feet long. But the ones I wanted to mention to you, the ones you might be more likely to see, is the Disney Dream and Fantasy boats are 1,115 feet long. The Magic and Wonder cruise ships for Disney are 965 feet long. And yet on these videos online, they would tell you that no boat 450 feet long, it just snap in the waves. It snaps these big steel ships. I'm like, I actually had to laugh out loud when I saw that video earlier this week. I thought, you really think people are stupid, don't you? People won't do the research. That's their position. You won't go find out the truth. You won't search to see if things are real. But a boat the size of the ark is feasible and realistic. Matter of fact, the Chinese in the 50s built a scale boat and put it in waves in a wave making type of science research facility to see if it would survive, and it didn't just survive, it floated very well. The height and the width and the length all have to do with how well a boat floats in the ocean. And who is the greatest architect and builder of all? Your Father. Some things that we need to remind ourselves of. Hopefully you'll get the time to read through the entire story. Noah was 600 years old when the flood began in Genesis 7:6. They were in the ark 1 year and 10 days, Genesis 7:11 and 8:14. They reigned for 40 days and 40 nights, Genesis 7:12. The waters rose 15 cubits above the mountain peaks, Genesis 7:20. That's about 23 feet. So 22 to 25 feet, right? 23 is based on the 18.5-inch cubit. So 22 to 25 feet above the highest mountains of the earth. By the way, there's only one continent at this time. You realize that's biblical. Go read Genesis chapter 10. So some of you remember, if you're my age, when I was in grade school, I was taught about Pangea, that there was one supercontinent and it broke up and you can almost see how they all fit together. Pangea. Do y'all remember this from school? Anybody remember this from school? Somebody give me F. Remember Pangea? Okay. Genesis chapter 10 says, talking about the lineage that comes afterwards, that in the life of Peleg is when the earth divided. There was one supercontinent. This is not an idea of science. This is a foundation given to us by God of the world. In the life of Peleg, the earth divided. And so, as we look at these things, we look at science, they want you to think they're so smart, and they are so far behind. And I love it that your Bible has the facts about the earth and life inside of it. 7 pairs, matter of fact, and we read the first description, chapter 7 gives you more detail. 7 pairs of every clean animal. LTC, if you're taking the test, don't miss that. 7 pairs of every clean animal, and a pair, too, of every unclean animal. That's Genesis 7:2. Noah and family in the ark 1 year and 10 days, Genesis 7:11, 8:14. But here's something that I want you to consider this morning. The hallmarks of a hero shown from the life of Noah. A man of integrity, ability, selflessness, and self-sacrifice. A man who was devoted, who was courageous and brave, who had strength, and most of all, a conviction of faith. And so this morning, I want to share with you just a couple of thoughts. Turn me to Genesis chapter 9 now. We're going to look at the end of the story for a minute, and then we're going to jump to 1 Peter. Genesis chapter 9, beginning in verse 12. After the flood, after they've come out of the boat, after a year and 10 days inside the boat, and God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant for all generations to come, and I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind, and never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. And when the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and the living creatures of every kind on the earth." So God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth." And so I wonder how often, when you look at a rainbow, rainbows always attract our attention. Even in the world of those who are not believers, it's not unusual. You have a big, bright rainbow, and you open Facebook up, and where is it? Right there on that page. There's something miraculous, something out of our understanding. While we can explain it, well, you know, it's the sun through moisture, and it causes a prism, and it sets the rainbow on. Well, there's something greater about a rainbow. It's the promise, the covenant. I will not do this again. And as we look up into the sky and we see the rainbow, we're reminded that God has given to us a promise in life, right? 1 Peter chapter 3, and you can begin following with me in verse 18. 1 Peter 3, beginning in verse 18. "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous." The righteous for the unrighteous. That's Him for you. "To bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. And after being made alive, He went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, who were saved through water." I'm going to make one quick statement here. Verse 19. People want to make that say all sorts of strange things, and they want to throw out, oh, this is talking, brethren, he's talking about reminding those who have fallen, I am the Son of God, the authority above all. To make it anything more than that is more than it's supposed to be made. Verse 21, talking about the 8 in the boat. And we look at the story of Noah and how his family were saved and how incredible that was, right? I wonder what went through each and every one of their minds as the water began to raise the boat and the wood creaked as the wind blew and the water rose, and they held on to each other because there's only one person steering that boat, and it wasn't those 8 people. You know, it's funny how families go usually you know how families are either huggers or they're not. You know what I'm talking about? But it's funny when life's crises come and when fear of the unknown envelops you. There's a time in the lives of most people, everybody is a hugger. You know, I'm not as interested in the animals in the ark and how it was made and how it survived as I'm interested in the lives of those 8 people. Their relationship day in and day out as they worked on that ark day after day after day with people coming out to see, what are these crazy people doing? And God says, look at the story. Look at the story of Noah and how that I saved them from death. Back to verse 21. And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. Just as the water saved them, water saves you. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we cannot forget that, brethren. I don't know how many times I've heard this verse quoted and they stop. And this water now saves you, not the washing away of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God with a good conscience, the NIV says. And they stop there, and that's not what it says. If you stop there, you've lied, and you've held back the truth from those that you've talked to, because it is the resurrection of Jesus Christ in that baptism that saves you. Speak where the Bible speaks. Don't be silent where the Bible speaks. Baptism saves you because of the power of Jesus Christ that works inside of it.